Speaking of steps, I suppose I should take a few moments to talk about a company that's entire recent history seems like a series of missteps, and that's Beckett. And I know this has been discussed quite a bit already this week. If you're like me, you get tired of seeing the same hobby stories regurgitated again and again. But I think it's worth discussing real quick because it follows a recent pattern that I've been hitting on with some of these big hobby companies, as recently as last week when I talked about Alt. So, as part of Beckett's big display at the Mint Collective in Vegas, they showcased a giant gold label that said in all caps, "The new Gem Mint is here. Updated grading scale, same world-class standards." And then there were 4 9.5 subgrades with a 10 Gem Mint overall grade. Of course, that got people talking. In fact, it was goofy enough that a lot of people thought it might be an April Fool's joke, which in hindsight, they probably should have just said, yeah, that's what it was. But, it wasn't funny, so they would have looked incompetent either way. Well, after they saw all the negative reactions, they put out an announcement that more or less said, hey, it's changed. Now if you get 4 9.5s, it's going to be Mint Plus. But if you get 1 or 2 10s, it will be a Gem Mint 10. That was advertised. And just know that's not a direct quote. I'm paraphrasing here because their original attempt to clarify via video on Instagram cut off before all the information could get out. It looks like whoever runs their social media doesn't understand the platform very well. But eventually the full version got out. And my favorite part in all of that is that someone on their marketing team had to modify their big display they made up and turn one of the 9.5s into a 10 so it would be up to date. And you could see on there that they had, taped that 10 over the 9.5. And that's another indication that this probably wasn't thought out as well as it should have been, or at all. And that was more or less confirmed with yet another update after that read, quote, "After listening carefully to the feedback you all shared, we have decided not to make any changes to our grading scale at this time. We will keep you updated with an official announcement later next week regarding improvements to our grading scale." Now, I've talked about BGS numerous times on this show before. On episode 179, I talked about their slab fiasco at last year's National. It was all excuses. Well, the design team did that, and they're separate from the card people. Left hand, right hand. Which culminated in me saying I thought they were undergoing a bit of an identity crisis. There just didn't seem to be a lot of direction at the company, especially not from card people. And this was all after the new CEO said he wanted to have open dialogue with collectors, which if they had actually done that prior to all this, it probably would have pointed them in the right direction. So it makes it all the more puzzling to me that in their little video explanation on Instagram, Beckett's representative said they ran this most recent decision by hobby participants. We ran this by the hobby. Does that sound familiar to you? Remember last week when Alt told us their 20% buyer's premium was vetted by people in the hobby? Sure didn't seem like it after the announcement had been made. Which begs the question, and I posted this in my stories this week, once again, who are these companies talking to? And there's a part of me that I guess respects Alt a little more, not much, mind you, but I respect them a little more because they saw the response to their decisions and they were undeterred. It was just full speed ahead. But this is twice now that Beckett has seen major backlash from the collecting community and immediately did an about face. And on top of that, this time it looks like they flat out lied to us and told us that they ran this by people in the hobby ahead of time. So if Beckett actually wants to get input from people, I'd love to run this by them. If you tell us you're talking to people in the hobby, we need to see it. Let us in on at least some of those conversations. And when I say us, I mean people in the hobby, not me specifically. But let us see these conversations play out. And then if you actually already are talking to people in the hobby, whoever you're talking to, just know they've been giving you really bad advice. Find someone else to talk to, even if it's just putting a poll out on Instagram and Twitter. That might be a good place to start. But I would say you have to tread carefully at this point because your brand recognition in the hobby will only carry you so far. And it seems like at the moment, it's affording you a lot more chances than you would normally get.